Institutional racism and indigenous peoples. Historically, between the 1800s and early 90s, indigenous peoples have been victims of institutional racism around the world. Most governments use residential school systems to separate the indigenous children from their families, communities, and culture, thus attempting to destroy their individual cultural identities. Whether it's the indigenous people from United States, Australia, or Canada, there are similarities and differences across and within regional context in the experience of indigenous people who attended these schools. Common hallmarks of these systematic removals include loss of language, culture, family connections, and intergenerational trauma. Today, in this presentation, I would like to talk about the experiences of Indigenous people of Canada, the First Nations and Métis, their past, present, and future. In Canada, more than 150,000 Indigenous children were forcibly taken from their homes between 1880 until the late 90s and placed in schools where they were stripped of their identities. The residential school system run by the churches amounted to cultural genocide. At least 6,000 children died while attending these schools as they were exposed to harsh conditions and treatments. Finally, in 1986, the United Church of Canada apologized for its role in the residential school system. The Anglican Church followed the suit in 1992. Some Catholic organizations have apologized for their role in the school system. In 2009, Pope Benedict XVI expressed sorrow for the experiences of the residential school survivors. In 2017, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asked the Pope to issue an apology over its role in the Indian residential school system. In 1991, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples was formed to investigate the relationship between Indigenous peoples in Canada, the Government of Canada, and Canadian society as a whole. When its final report was released after 5 years in 1998, the Aboriginal Healing Foundation was established. And on 30th September 2021, a legislation was passed by the federal government to mark this day as a day of truth and reconciliation and the Orange Shirt Day. The use of an orange shirt as a symbol was inspired by the accounts of Phyllis Jack Webster, whose personal clothing, including a new orange shirt, was taken from her during her first day of residential schooling and never returned. The orange shirt is thus used as a symbol of the forced assimilation of the indigenous children that the residential school system enforced upon them. The official tagline of the Orange Shirt Day, Every Child Matters, reminds Canadians that all people's cultural experiences are important. Through the observance of this day, the education on the history of residential schools and their assimilation practices are encouraged. For instance, many communities have held memorial walks, film screenings, and public lectures to raise awareness about Indigenous history. Accordingly, school boards across Canada have begun to use this event to teach children about the system. The Government of Canada and its people have set an example of how truth and reconciliation with the past can pave a way to create a different, better, and equal future for all. The other effective strategies are also listed in here. So spread the awareness, educate, participate, and be the change.